I was sorry to hear of your husband's death. I understand you have a son. Yes, said Lucilla. Lucius. He's almost 8 years old. I too have a son who's 8 years old. They smiled at each other again. I thank you for your kind thoughts, said Maximus. And then he walked slowly back to his tent. Lucilla watched him go. Her thoughts were confused, and her emotions reminded her that she had once loved this man. Maximus sat in front of a low table in his tent. On the table were small wooden figures of his family, parents and the grandparents. In the center, protected by the others, were the two smallest figures. These were his wife and his child. Your time limit here is 1 minute and 5 seconds. As he looked at his family, he tried to imagine that his father or grandfather would do in his situation. What would they decide? How would they advise him? He picked up the figure of his wife and kissed it. Cicero, he called out. Behind him, his servant Cicero appeared and gave him a drink. Do you ever find it difficult to do your duty? Maximus asked him. Cicero, a tall, thin man with long hair, thought about the question for a few seconds. Sometimes I do what I want to do, sir, he said. The rest of the time, I do what I have to do. Maximus smiled. We may not be able to go home, he said, sadly. Marcus Aurelius sat in his great tent, lit only by the light of a fire, and prepared himself to tell Commodus of his decision. Finally, he said, You will do your duty for Rome. And your time limit here is 1 minute and 10 seconds. Commodus stood in front of him, proud and tall, waiting to hear his father name him as the next Caesar. Yes, father, he said. But you will not be emperor, Marcus said. Commodus froze as his future suddenly disappeared. Who will take my place? He asked. My power will pass to Maximus, to hold until the Senate is ready to rule. Rome will be a republic again. I can see that you are not happy, my son. You break my heart, Commodus said. I have tried to make you proud, but I could never do it. Why do you hate me so much? I only wanted to be your son, but I was never quite good enough. Marcus put his arms around his son, and Commodus cried, Why does Maximus deserve this instead of me? Why do you love him more than me? And your time limit here is 1 minute and 6 seconds. His voice grew louder as he held his father's head tighter and tighter. Marcus could not breathe. He began to move, trying to get away, but Commodus held his father's face close against his chest. His strength was too great. Marcus could not escape. Commodus did not relax until he felt his father's body drop in his arms. He placed him on the bed, dead. You didn't love me enough, he said softly. Quintus woke Maximus in the middle of the night. Maximus realized immediately that there was trouble. The emperor needs you, Quintus said. It's urgent. What is it? Maximus asked. They did not tell me, said Quintus. They hurried to Marcus's tent together. At the entrance, the guards let them through without a word. Inside, Maximus saw Commodus first. His face was white but showed no emotion. Lucilla stood in a corner of the tent, looking down at the floor. Then Maximus saw Marcus, lying on his bed. He knew immediately that he was dead. Your time limit here is 1 minute and 30 seconds. How did he die? He asked. In his sleep, said Commodus. The doctor said there was no pain. Maximus looked at Lucilla, but he turned away. He walked to the bed, bent over Marcus, and kissed the top of his head. Then he stood and faced Commodus. Commodus looked back at him and held out his hand. "Your emperor asks for your loyalty," he said. "Take my hand, Maximus." Maximus understood the situation exactly. He knew without a doubt that Commodus had killed his father. "I shall only offer it once," said Commodus. Maximus walked past him and out of the tent. Quintus already had his orders from the new Caesar. Commodus looked across at him and followed his general out into the night. Lucilla bent over her father and kissed him. Then she turned to her brother. Their eyes met. She hit his face twice, hard. He stepped back, shocked. Then she took his right hand, lifted it to her lips, and kissed it. "I greet you, Caesar," Lucilla said, without emotion. Your time limit here is 1 minute and 30 seconds. Back in his own tent, Maximus called to Cicero. "I must talk to the senators," he said. "Wake Gaius and Falco. I need their advice." Quintus arrived just then and caught the servant's arm to stop him. "Maximus, please be careful." "Careful? The emperor was murdered," said Maximus. "No," said Quintus. "The emperor died in his sleep." Maximus looked toward the entrance of the tent and saw 4 royal guards with their swords ready. They came in and quickly tied his hands and arms. "Please don't fight, Maximus," said Quintus. "I'm sorry. Caesar has spoken." Maximus understood. Quintus was a soldier, and his orders had come from the top. He had to obey. "Quintus, promise me you'll look after my family," said Maximus. "Your family will greet you in the next world," Quintus said, quietly. Maximus jumped at him in anger. One of the guards hit the prisoner on the back of the head with the handle of his sword, and Maximus fell to the ground. "Take him as far as the sunrise, and then kill him," said Quintus. Your time limit here will be 1 minute and 35 seconds. It was nearly sunrise, and the 5 horses on the forest road had not passed anybody for several hours. Here, there was nothing, no help, no hope. "All right, this is far enough," said Cornelius, the oldest of the guards and their leader. "Take him down there. No one will ever find him." 2 of the guards climbed from their horses and pulled Maximus from his horse. His hands were still tied in front of him. Cornelius searched in his bag for something to eat. He would make sure the orders from Caesar were obeyed, but he did not want to have Roman blood on his hands. The other man, Salvius, stayed with the 3 horses. The 2 guards led Maximus down the hill. They thought he had given up the fight, but he was like a cat watching a mouse. He could see they were young, and their armor was still new. These were royal guards. They almost never left Rome, and they did not usually go into battle. They were not experienced fighters. "This is good enough," said one of the men. "On your knees." Behind Maximus, one of the guards was ready with his sword to cut off his head. The second guard stood facing Maximus. Your time limit here is 1 minute and 45 seconds. Good luck.